All right, so this is Board of Finance, regular meeting, Thursday, April 27th, 7 p.m. This meeting will be recorded and made available on town's website pursuant to state law. If you're attending remotely, please remember to mute your microphone unless you are speaking. Anyone participating remotely should state their name and title, if applicable, at the outset of each occasion that person is speaking. All votes taken during which any member of the body are participating remotely shall be taken by roll call unless the vote is unanimous. Chat feature will not be utilized during this meeting. All right, so we were called to order. We have Steve Kirsch.
Present.
We have Rebecca O'Donnell.
Present.
Greg Benno.
Present.
Mary Hall.
She wasn't.
She said she wasn't going to be.
Wasn't going to make it. Okay. Catherine Stauffer.
Present.
We have Ken Kellogg.
I'm here.
Frank Duchess.
Here.
Ron Manowski.
Here.
Heidi Mead.
Here.
Deb Heim.
She's on vacation.
She's on vacation. All right. And we got Joe in the corner there, I think.
Here. Yep.
We need you today, but you're there anyway. Great. All right. We're done with you for a while, at least.
Your spare part today, Joe.
Exactly. You're an afterthought today. That's okay.
Oh my Lord.
Let's start approval of the meeting minutes.
Steve Kirsch, I move to approve the meeting minutes and voting records for March 16th, 2023, the special meeting minutes for March 23rd, March 30th, and April 6th, and the meeting minutes and voting record for April 13th, 2023.
Greg Benno, second.
Any discussion, questions, comments?
Lots of notes, but no.
All right. Any opposed? All right. Hearing none, pass unanimous. Communications, first selectman, you are up.
Thanks. I don't have a whole lot tonight, other than obviously, the referendum is on Tuesday.
Get out and vote. Yes.
Everyone needs to get out and vote. All the notices have been put out there. The reminder postcards will be going out very soon from the town clerk's office to all the residents, and just get out and vote. There's one item on your agenda in regards to transfers for the Wolf Park Field project, but I can defer that until you get to that agenda item.
Perfect. All right. Superintendent, Joe, you got anything for us?
Just one small little piece of good news for once. There's some residual funds remaining at the state level, which brought our excess cost reimbursement up about $109,000 more than we had originally anticipated. So we had originally budgeted $591 in reimbursement.
Current fiscal year?
Current, yeah. Looks like we're gonna get about $700,000, so about $109,000 more. Usually comes in around 70%. It's supposed to be 100%, but it's gonna be a little higher than that. Some good news.
That's good.
All right. That is good news. Appreciate that. I think the next thing on our list is the fire department's first quarter.
I forgot to put them in.
Yeah, they were not in the packet.
I was going to say, yeah.
They
I
were
don't-
sitting
I
on my
haven't seen
desk.
anything, and if we were handing them out, exactly.
I think
You want to just kick them to the next?
Were we missing one?
We got it, but I'm sorry, I was working on.
It's again, I don't think there's anything urgent. We can certainly kick it to the next meeting.
Okay.
We could send out what you have after this meeting
Sure.
and then just add it, keep it on the agenda for any discussion, but so people have it in
Exactly.
advance. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Public participation. Anybody in the room there?
No.
Oh,
As usual, anybody on the phones? All right, hearing none. New business review of the general fund audit entries for fiscal year 2022. Ron, you want to take this one, or
Actually, Heidi is, but
Heidi's good?
yeah, mine. I think Mary had most of the questions. So.
Found it. All right, we only had a few entries, and The first entry is just, the rate, the auditors tying out the final tie out to the rate book. That, I had not had a chance to do when we sent out the trial balance. That brings us to, agree with the rate book with Deb Hines numbers, and the other ones are just, correction entries that I had done to, one of them, the second one, I'm sorry, is just for, to tie out to the bank confirms with the auditors. The third and fourth one are just, correction entries that I had made. One was, the number 3 was I booked it twice in error. And number 4, I had, booked this entry before I knew there was a purchase order, an invoice against with a purchase order that was, wasn't paid yet. So this entry got reversed.
Okay.
All right, and that's it.
Any questions on that?
You know, Mike, while we're on the audit, there are
Yes.
hard copies available. It is available electronically on the town's website. I can certainly, I don't know if did I pass off hard copies to anyone already? If anyone want hard copy?
No.
So after, I could certainly make that available to you after. So.
Okay.
All right. Well, that rolls us into our next subject, which is request for qualifications for audit services.
So.
RFQ.
Yeah, so, Mike, I know I've discussed this with you already and with Ken and with Heidi and with Heidi's counterpart on the Board of Education. I haven't discussed it with Joe, but so the thought was rather than do an RFP to do an RFQ, which is less paperwork up front, but it's gonna involve a little bit of a process. So we need to, for fiscal year 23, we do need to name the auditor by May 1st. I'm sorry, by May 31st. So the thought was to retain our current auditors for one more year. And to issue the RFQ during May, but have the time frame would be to receive responses about 6 weeks out to start interviewing for next year. And the interviews would be done either by the Board of Finance or by a subgroup of the Board of Finance. The thought was to either do the interviews, to select candidates for interviews, either at the beginning of the summer, or if you guys wanted to hold those interviews over the summer, or to do them first thing in the fall, September. At that point in time, we could, choose, we could start negotiating contracts and the QBS process that we were going to be using with RFQ.
Yes.
So it's a little bit of a longer process, but probably a worthwhile process. The other thing was what we've noticed is the audits have kind of changed over the last couple of years. So the thought was to pose questions in the RFQ to the tune of, would the audit be remote? Would it be in person? Would it be combination of both? And if it's a combination of both, the time frame, because what we found is that our current auditors have become more remote, and it's created certain inefficiencies. Shall I say?
Yeah,
So
no, there's
that
no
was a-
question
that
about
was
it.
a
I mean, I
concern
think that's the world.
internal.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I think that's the way the world's gone. I mean, I like the idea of doing the RFQ for now and then setting up, I don't know if anybody else was through this, but it's been a long time since we've done it, but it is a cumbersome process to bring them in and interview and do all that.
Mike, the other thing I wanted to add that Heidi just reminded me of, our current auditors, the audit, assuming
Team
we
change, right?
retain them, they will be changing their partner in charge. So
Okay.
the current partner in charge will be leading the engagement. The the manager, the current manager has been promoted to partner and she would be running the engagement. And she's informed us, I think she actually informed Heidi, she would be running the engagement a little bit. So there would be that change if we decided to, you know, retain the current one.
Okay. And you
What
said May
about- given
31st.
the
or
short
deadline.
timeframe, you have to retain them now.
Well, it would
Or
be,
no,
it would
right?
be difficult.
It would be tough to do it otherwise.
That's
Yeah.
what-
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so what, since she's gonna change, what is it that's going to change about how they're going to do it?
Hopefully more in person,
Did they elaborate? Okay,
but hopefully more in person and less.
so my question for Ron, because he just went through several time periods on the schedule. If we put it off, does putting it off to the fall,
So.
then layer you or whatever onto other, things that are
Yeah,
going
so,
on?
so that would be more, because some of the interviewing would be, the board would have to be involved in that. So the thought is to get the RFQ out on the street mid to late May and have responses by the end of June.
Okay, and then go ahead and start.
And then start the
process.
process, exactly.
That to me makes more sense, I think, than pushing that process out until the
That,
fall.
no, that part of the process, I would
Oh, okay.
continue. It's the interviews. When would you guys want to enter
Okay.
interviews?
August?
You could.
Yeah, I mean, the only
you could do August, September,
downside with
you're still-
August is we typically
ahead.
tend to punt the August meeting, a lot of vacations and stuff, so I was leaning towards
downside.
September, but yeah,
Even in
I
September.
don't know about the rest of you, but I need a vacation this year.
And we have until May.
Well,
to
yeah, I
name
just
the auditor.
didn't want to
Yeah.
push it out and run into other things that might be going on, like at the beginning of the school year and,
I think
and,
it's,
and,
Yeah.
budgetary things and other workloads for
Well, they gotta
staff.
close the budget, right?
Right.
They're closing in the summer.
So if we don't need to name someone till May, then I think September, October is fine.
yeah, because
Okay,
time game.
no, I mean, the question,
I think we should probably start the interview process early September then,
okay,
but we could have.
Yeah, I think that for sure. I don't want to kick it past that because I don't want to get in a point where
Right.
we're dealing with the holidays and,
Right.
that, but September makes
And-
sense to me.
Yeah, and by, Ron, I talked about this from the other strategy is, using the RFQ process, which our purchasing policy does allow for professional services. It grants you a lot more flexibility in timelines and negotiations and things like that. So, whereas, we go RFP, then we're talking sealed bids and
right.
it locks you in a little bit more, right? So I think this provides the board a lot of flexibility
Hmm.
in doing interviews and not rushing.
The last process, which was an RFP process, really still came down to
To the
the
interview.
interviews and the price were the two driving. And this kind of streamlines it.
So,
Yeah,
Would
I
you
think that
pen-
makes sense.
if we pencil that in now, for our May meeting, can we have that as an item with a calendar of events?
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually lay it down and.
Timeline and-
Lay out the timeline.
Yeah, timeline it out for us. That'd be perfect.
So then the
And Ron, my
RFP wouldn't
question
go out
also
until
is
that
for
point,
this
till
year,
after their next meeting. That's which I think we're still okay.
I think that's fine. And the only thing I would ask, is there anything the board of, any board members have any specific things that they would like Ron to include in the RFQ? So there will be a series of, standard stuff that you would expect, their qualifications, background, which we assume everyone's going to have, but
References.
are there references, but are there specific
the only thing I
questions?
would recommend adding in there is, can we put something in there that, a requirement of a certain amount of done in-house as opposed to just, remote.
Yeah,
You know,
well, if
can
it's
we put-
if it's RFQ, I think it would be more posed as a question of, what would you would
Describe how.
Describe
how much
your-
present. present you will be versus remote.
Right, describe the process, what, number of in-person versus remote versus
Yeah.
whatever, and we could find a way to word that, but yeah. I agree, Mike. I think it should be, I know that's like on the top of Ron's list of questions.
Well, it's on
Right.
the top of Heidi and
Yeah.
Linda Cementelli.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
So if you want to
Well,
get it
and you
out
could also
before,
frame that as a requirement.
I'm sorry?
You could also frame that as a requirement in your pricing.
Yes, but then you're only gonna get that. Right? So if you do it as an RFQ and you have a firm that is not interested in doing any
Anything.
in person, you may want to exclude them.
Mhm.
And if you have those that are then in the interview process, you can kind of you can maybe dive into that a little bit
Yeah.
more, negotiate, that kind of thing. And
It's kind of cast a wide net.
Yeah.
yeah.
so Ron, do you want to, is your goal to get that out before our next
So
meeting in May?
the thought
And
was
do you
mid-May,
need
but
us to do something
if,
beforehand?
I think we're fine, especially since the interviews won't be starting until September. So I could even push out. I wanted to give firms enough time to respond. I wanted to give a minimum of 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks.
So you bring everything back at our May meeting. We have a timeline, we can talk about it, and then from there you can release the questionnaire or whatever.
Yeah.
Does that work
Yeah, I think that works. Yep.
So the board look at a draft RFQ
at the next
at the
meeting?
next meeting.
Or you can send it out, you can
Mhm.
send your thoughts out first and
Makes
And,
sense.
and we'll deal with it at the next meeting and give you the okay to then proceed, as long as the next meeting isn't too far.
Right.
Into May.
Yeah,
Which-
it won't be the
Yeah.
next meeting should be setting the mill rate.
Let's
hopefully.
hope.
Yeah,
And would one
Excuse me,
of, would
yes.
one of the things be like, do you run into like multi-year? So that could be a potential question. Like, would they
Oh,
want a multi-year contract?
So,
commitment?
so
How does that usually
GFOA
work?
recommends a minimum of 1-year contracts, but they, if you're gonna change firms, the 5 years is the thought.
So our next general meeting is the 18th of May.
Right.
So I'll give you enough.
so that
time.
gives them. Yeah, I was talking about the regular meeting, not the special meeting.
Right.
All right,
The
that sounds-
extension of services with the current firm, the pricing stays the same?
So I do have a price from them. That they, I did reach out to them and they got a price for me.
Okay.
So if you are okay with that, I can tell you what the price is and then we can.
Please.
I don't want to divulge the price if we're, not gonna use them because that would put, but the all-in price for, is 85,075.
And how does that compare to what it is now?
It's, I think we were just north of 80.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah,
So the-
I'm in support of that. Okay.
So the other thing, and again, I think typically, I don't know if it's normally the consent, but for the board to vote on that and then we'll name them.
Yeah,
I just need to amend the agenda, that's all.
Yeah, we do need to have the board formally do that on the record, and then council will have to approve their engagement agreement for the charter, but the condition precedent would be the board naming it, so appointing them, yes.
Mike, this is Steve. I'll make a motion
Go ahead,
to
please.
amend the agenda, new business to add item D. Authorization to extend for 1 year the contract of the audit of the current auditors,
It's actually just appointing them. Yeah.
appointing them.
Just appointing them. Yep. We have a
So that'll
second.
be an item D.
Rebecca O'Donnell, second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, any opposed? All right, we amend the agenda. Go ahead, Steve.
I move to, under item D, I move to
Actually, we haven't hit item.
Well, we haven't. hit
Oh, we haven't
item
hit
D yet.
item
We'll
D
come,
yet.
we'll come and do it when we hit it. I've got two other things for.
Fine. The only one that I'm seeing, but,
Sorry.
all right, good. Let's jump ahead. Then we'll go to Ken for the proposed transfers for the capital reserve fund.
Okay. Sure, and I'll let Ron get into more details of this, but basically everyone I'm sure is aware that we've gotten the much awaited new fields project at Wolf Park underway after a long period of time, and part of that was kind of evaluating the scope of that project, and we found there was a lot of unnecessary costs that were there when the bids first came in a few years back, and so the team went back and did a lot of pencil sharpening and identified a lot of things that for whatever reason were there that were not necessary, and made things simpler while also meeting the needs of the end users without sacrificing the needs. So the good news is we've got the project in. It came in for construction at $555,000, which was much lower than the low bid a couple of years back, which was over $800,000. So we're in good shape, and that is within the overall funding that had been originally identified a few years back, where we could tap into, and some of those had to do with leftover funds for bonding, which we're good with, but there's some others that have to do with funds that are still sitting in other accounts that Ron can talk about in the first case. And the second case, we'd always identified Parks and Rec's Field Assessment Fund as a source of funding. That is more of a procedural issue because the way that fund works, the Parks and Rec Commission votes first, and then it comes to the Board of Finance for final approval to transfer that. So, Ron, you want to kind of dive into? Sure. And
So the first transfer is the funds were originally earmarked for the tennis courts. We weren't sure if they were going to be needed. As it turned out, they weren't entirely needed. The majority of that project was covered with loads of funds, grant funds from the state. The remainder of those funds were then used to pave the parking lot at Wolf Park. And there were remaining funds, and the majority of that project was also covered with loads of funds. So these residual funds kind of carried from project to project. They originally came from the Parks and Rec Program Fund. There of the 150, 137 is still remaining. And the idea is to transfer them over to use them. Right.
which was always the original intent
Yes,
from quite a while ago.
yes. And the other is a interfund transfer, again, as Ken had stated, the from the Field Assessment Fund over to the Capital Reserve Fund to bring them there. So that brings three pools of funds all in one.
Actually, there's the fourth. There's the Wilton donation.
Wilton Trust.
Wilton Trust, right? Pretty sure.
That I believe was already,
Was it?
yeah.
Okay.
I think that
It was definitely a source of funding, but maybe it was already used in a design portion or something. Okay, that's fine. Well, I know these are the only two that require transfers.
Yes.
The others are already in the right buckets. So,
Mike, this is Steve. I have motions for both. I'll do them one at a time. I'll read the following resolution and ask for its adoption. Resolved that the following budget transfers be approved pursuant to Chapter 8, Section 7G of the Town Charter for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023, $137,048 from the Parks and Recreation Tennis Court Project and the Wolf Park Paving Project, and $137,048 to Capital Reserve Wolf Park Field Project.
Greg Beno, a second.
All right, discussion. Ken, I do have a question, or Ron, whoever can answer this. what's our time frame on these? Because obviously, I was involved 100 years ago when we came up with this original plan. I was just wondering, you just walk us through the schedule.
We broke ground last week.
Okay. And they'll be playable, what, 2 years out? Is that the?
Yeah, there's like 2 growing seasons, I think, before they're
Right.
fully.
I just want to make sure everybody's not expecting them to be, ready for the fall.
Right.
Perfect. That's all I had.
You want to call for a vote?
Yeah, I didn't know if anybody else had any questions, but
Oh.
sure, I'm ready to move on. Hearing no further discussions, all those opposed? Hearing none, we pass unanimous. Awesome.
Okay, I'll now read the following.
Now we're ready for D.
Well, no, we got the other one, the
Oh, the
second
other one, I'm
transfer.
sorry, that's right.
I'll read the following resolution and ask for its adoption. Resolved, the following budget transfers be approved pursuant to Chapter 8, Section 7G of the Town Charter for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023, $145,000 from the Field Assessment Fund and $145,000 to Capital Reserve Wolf Park Field Project.
Greg Beno, second.
Okay. Any discussion on this one?
Mike, I'll just say that I did.
Please.
I went to, the, I guess it was last month to the, Parks and Rec Commission meeting, and they did approve. The transfer from their end.
Perfect. All right, hearing no further discussion, any opposed? Hearing none, we pass unanimous.
What's appointment?
Appointment.
Appointment, right?
For fiscal year ending.
Fiscal year 20.
I move to appoint the current auditors for the year ending June 30th, 2024. 2023.
I second.
Any other discussion?
Ron, do we need to
Hearing none.
memorialize the specific name of the auditor?
PK O'Connor Davis.
Probably not a bad idea, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, any opposed? Hearing none, pass unanimously. All right. Review of the financial reports, general fund budget report. Anything to call out, Ron or Heidi?
Heidi spent the vast majority of today, probably more than today, she's working on reconciling the tax revenue accounts, with the tax collector office, which is, usually a process, but she's still in the midst of that, so.
Okay.
I will just point out though, well, this has been mentioned at other meetings, right now you can see, as of 3/31, overall in the tax accounts, they're 792 under budget. But, again, just to point out, the motor vehicle property tax, grant was 785. So if you net those two numbers, we're basically at budget for tax revenue.
Right. And just to extend that a little bit, and the reason that it's showing up that way is when we prepared the current fiscal year budget, this wasn't known, so the grant was not budgeted. Whereas in fiscal year 24, in our upcoming budget, it will not look like this because we have budgeted the grant.
We knew it.
Right.
Well, having said that, the grant wasn't known, but the tax collection should be lighter.
Right.
Because of the maximum for motor vehicles.
Right.
I don't know, does anyone have any specific questions on the revenue? You know, the other thing I'll carve out is the ECS grant. We have that last payment of 2.6 million. We haven't reconciled April yet, but the grant has been received this week.
Excellent.
I won't discuss any investment revenue.
There you go. Frank.
And then expenditures, I don't know if anyone has any specific questions. Entertaining.
I got nothing. Anybody else have anything?
Not me.
All right. Let's move on. Anything else in the fund statements? Anything want to call out to us?
I'll just say the last 3 months of the year, we pulled some, we're gonna be, we're gonna go to the finish line, on the Board of Ed side. It's gonna be on the Board of Ed budget. I'm expecting we're not gonna have a $2 million. We're tracking things tight. We did move some money off of the grants to absorb in the budget to keep grant funds available for next year, as I think you're all aware. So it's the next 3 months, we'll be looking at things closely.
Do you have some transfers coming up at the Board of Ed meeting on Monday?
No. Yeah, well, there are some small ones, but I anticipate first week of probably for one of the June meetings to have something.
Okay.
At that point, so the balloon payment to the teachers is the 9th of June. There's a lot of clarity we'll get right around that time.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, it is fine. Anyone have
All right.
any questions? Steve?
Yeah, no. Okay. Your tax collector is not there, so treasurer.
Couple of things, Mike. Last week, we moved another $2 million from the state STIF fund into treasuries. We bought $1 million worth of 3-month treasury at an interest rate of 5.06 and another $1 million of 6-month at 5.02. So very nice rates. It was to, again, further diversify, but also to use it kind of as a hedge, not knowing exactly where interest rates are going. STIF as of today was 4.91. So the rates were good. I think I sent you and Ken a note, and I was reading an article in Financial Times last week, and it was the future of interest rates a riddle. And we're all kind of looking at that. Where is it going to go? We've done some estimates, but I do think if we continue to look at those treasuries to be in that 4+ range over the next several months, we may continue to move some over, because eventually later this year, we should see rates start to drop, even though there's going to be another 25 basis point probably change from the Fed next week. We should start to see rates go. We've seen the STIF rate jump up as high as 4.95. It's dropped down to 4.89. It's sitting at about 4.51. So again, I think we will continue in that direction as we look at the rates. I think I mentioned at one of the budget meetings we were doing, the changes we had requested from Newtown Savings Bank. They have taken effect. We no longer have to keep an $800,000 minimum balance in our general fund account. It's down to $250,000, so we get the higher interest rate on that. And on the WMMR, where we had $600,000 sitting out there, We've moved that down to 50,000, the other into ICS, and we're getting a stiff rate on that now as well. So two very good changes. Newtown was very good to work with in getting it done, and Heidi was very good in getting us to have visibility to it, because it didn't all go smoothly, but Heidi straightened that out, so that was good. Our current, Mary asked one of the last budget meetings where I thought things were gonna end interest wise. Kind of back of the napkin, just kind of thrown it in. I said, probably hit about 2 million. Right now, we're at 1.5 million. The month of March, we did 261,000. That's bad
Okay.
after the rates going up, but we will see our fund balance, the general fund balance, go down as we get closer to June before additional income comes in. So I'm very comfortable that we'll make the 2 million. I think the reality is we will probably exceed that. We'll take a look at what April looks like, what it comes in. We'll see based on how quickly our fund balance is decreasing and what the change in interest rate is. But I think we'll see the 2 million and probably exceed that.
Do you have one venture a wild guess how much in dollars above the two?
You know, if you said it stayed flat at the 2.6, it'd bring us in at about somewhere between 2.2 and 2.3. But I don't think it's because of the fund balance will go down. I think although the rates are probably going to stay roughly where they are, the fund balance will go down, so the monthly number will come down some. So it's going to be above the 2. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'll take it. Plus or minus 100,000. Nice round number.
That's it, Mike.
Okay. Yeah, no, to your point with rates, I mean, we're definitely, there's a lot of conversation going on in Asia, which we talked about in the pension meeting.
Right.
The rates are not ticking up over here the same way. So I think we are going to see a calming of it. So I would push as hard as we can over the next, 3 or 4 months to capture what we can.
Yep.
Maybe we'll work with Ron to see how much we can push over. But if we can lock in, some early results, even for fiscal year next year, I think it's worth doing right now.
Well, what we're seeing right now is you still have an inverted yield curve where the short-term rates are better than like the 1 year or the 2 year rates. So I would look to continue with that. And certainly as we've been doing this, continue to work with Ron, make sure from a cash flow standpoint, we're not doing anything that impacts that.
Right. Perfect. Okay. Anybody have anything else?
Hey, Mike, just a little house cleaning. So the 3-year budget model and review of the roads.
Yeah, that's
you
what's
want
good
to keep those as standing.
I mean, the 3-year budget model, I mean, we worked through the budget. I think we can take that off there. And I know the roads report is on its way, and I know the council's working. I think we need to set up a joint meeting over the summer with council.
Yeah, I'd
talk
like to
about
see that
roads
left
long-term.
on, Mike, and in fact, there was a presentation by VHB to council on Monday night. The presentation material is out on the web.
Yeah, it's in the council packet, but if anyone is having trouble getting a hand of it, I can send it to them as one separate document. I mean, the good news is, they confirmed that the PCI continues to increase steadily, actually a slightly higher increase over the last 4 years than from the prior 4 years. We are now slightly higher than average of communities of our size. So that was all really good news, and they kind of commended us for our approach, particularly with how we, deal with drainage beforehand. The challenge that I see and what they highlighted, which is a point well taken, is because of the inflation that we've been seeing. The historical $2 million a year that we've been investing between, operating expense, town aid road, and bonding, to kind of continue to achieve that steady increase because of inflation. You're probably looking at, a 20% you are looking at a 20% increase on that dollar amount at this point. So they're recommending at least a they're indicating at least a $2.4 million spend in the the next few years. Good news is for next fiscal year, we have 2.5 million programmed. So we're already a little bit higher than that. That is largely driven by increased grant revenue. So that will create, as we look at, I think, fiscal year 25 and beyond, we got to start thinking about, how we're going to fund it at or above 2.4. And, there may be opportunity for more TAR funds in the future. I know that there's been some push by CCM and others to try and get the state to adjust some of the grants that haven't really increased at all over several years, TAR being one of them. The argument being that you give us this bucket of money for things like paving, but those haven't increased and been adjusted for inflation at either. So, with the possibility of that going up, and I think we have to keep an eye on that. I think, we got to make sure we're, I certainly want to advocate for us to continue to fund, so we keep seeing a nice steady increase into the at least the low 80s, which I think would be ideal. So
I guess my only question is what is there now for us to do besides meet with council and put a plan together financially?
There's really not much. I mean, VHB,
that's what I'm saying. So do we need this? That's why do we need this placeholder?
Yeah, at this point,
the meeting?
Yeah, I mean, VHB is going to go. Now they're going to kind of finalize their reports and their software program to kind of prioritize roads based on. You try to, what I always call it is like it's almost like a diversified portfolio, right? You don't want to spend all your money on full reclamation. You don't want to spend it all on crack sealing either. You want to spend a little bit on all those different treatment bands so that you're getting the most ideal spread of those dollars to keep your road conditions, improving overall and diversify some of that investment. So they've got to plug that in. They'll work with Public Works to come up with their initial priority list, which, largely on year one is they rely on that heavily. And then as time goes by, they've got to kind of look at changing conditions. But I think once we have that, and I would say that the next step is really to, again, have that discussion with council. It kind of goes, I think, almost hand in hand with the discussion we were having at the last meeting about potential for looking at where surplus is at, and is there other capital that you want to accelerate, sooner, but thinking about, kind of again that 3-year budget model. Where do we want to be, fiscal year 25, 26, in terms of funding levels, and again. If we don't have the availability of increased bonding, then we have to look elsewhere. So, I'm sorry, not increased bonding, increase grant revenue.
Yeah, the scary part was that, they've raised as Ken said, the annual recommended spends on the middle and top tier. And really the question is, at what point do we want to get up to that 85-ish, 82, 85-ish level that we had originally been talked about, when we started this whole thing in 2010. And they made it clear, if you spend less than we're spending now, it's going to go, your road condition is going to go down. I mean, the other thing that was concerning to me, but obviously well explained by inflation, is the fact that 4 years ago, they told us we had about $18 million worth of work, and they came in this time and said, now you got about 22 million. So
yeah, that makes sense.
It makes sense. There was some conversation with questions from council, about what about front end loading versus what essentially is a flat plan or flat options versus what if you spent less now and more in the back end? And they obviously said that was not what they would recommend in terms of back-end loading. They said, front-end loading has some value. And so I would have a discussion with council and whomever as to whether or not, and with DPW, how much more could we do if we had, additional dollars? So that we can knock off some of this stuff and not end up paying more for the road for the same amount of asphalt, a year or two from now. Whether it's bonding, whether it's taking, some additional funds each year from the general fund, but those were the kinds of things. There were some interesting questions. There was also a couple of things that VHB said unprompted. One was using AI technology. They did walk through it because of a question, how they actually do their work, how they drive around, how they get out, how they measure areas, how they grade each section. But there is technology out there. He mentioned AI. There's companies that use vehicles with cameras and things like that for the analysis. And then he threw out a couple of towns, and one of which was Enfield. And I went and looked at their website. Apparently, they've hired somebody who I guess is an engineer and who is responsible for their road program. And they started doing more bonding. And I didn't know anything about their town, but on their website, it says they've got 180 miles of road compared to, we've got 140. But, they've got maps out there. They've got things with future plans. And again, that doesn't give you a whole picture, but he talked about, them undertaking a higher bonding. Quantity of dollars. So that was sort of interesting. Just, the commentary from the experts. So it was an interesting presentation.
I guess my question has just got more to do with next steps. So like, once we have aren't we at the point now where, we need to,
Yeah, I think
stop
we need
just
to meet
talking
with,
about it and wait, we just, yeah.
I think we should meet with council and talk about what the plans really should be going forward.
That's my feeling too, which is why I wanted to I think it's time to get it off our agenda and get it on a formal meeting, over the summer and move it forward. Was my point.
My opinion, it fits the same time period that you were talking about, looking at
Everything else.
potential for other capital discussions. Yeah. It's
Right.
the same, same kind of time frame.
Okay, good. Anything else before we call it a day or start the day?
So we'll call it
Like
a night here, and I'll move to adjourn.
We're all gonna have dinner. Are you gonna go have breakfast now?
I'm gonna go have breakfast now. Yes, as a matter of fact, I am.
Let's just be clear, you're the odd one out tonight.
Always. But thank you.